Hi everyone, welcome. I will be hosting the first part of this event. My name is Khadija and I work at Faith Network for Manchester, where we bring people of different faiths together to address issues of community cohesion and regeneration. We also address issues of common concern. This evening's event will be Remembering Srebrenica and is hosted by MACFEST and also is in partnership with Faith Network for Manchester, We Stand Together, Retta College, Levenshulme High School, Muslim Islamic Grammar School for Girls, and Canon Slade's Sixth Form. Our first guest speaker is Sir Peter Fahey, who is the chair of We Stand Together and former Chief Constable of Greater Manchester. Over to you, Peter.
Thank you, Khadija, and thank you, everybody, and welcome to tonight's event. We Stand Together started in 2015. At that time, there were sadly a number of terrorist attacks, and particularly at that time in Paris. And there was one that targeted a Jewish supermarket. And this caused great concern, not only amongst the Jewish community in Manchester, who clearly were very fearful, but also amongst the Muslim community, who were worried about people getting back at them for what had happened. So hearing the voices of different people, I decided that I needed to bring everybody together. And then a group of us, a group of leaders from across the city and Greater Manchester came together, and we had a number of events called We Stand Together, which was very much about us standing in solidarity. At that time, various extremists were coming into Greater Manchester to try and exploit the situation, to see if they could exploit the situation to sow hatred and prejudice and get people to turn against their neighbour. And so it was very important that we stood up and stated our position. So we had a number of great events. And so from that, We Stand Together developed. We've then set it up as a charity with a very diverse group of trustees. And what we believe very strongly, absolutely, there are issues which create difference. There are differences, obviously, between all the different communities, the nationalities, the faiths. And some people want to exploit those differences. We think it's very important that you sit down and talk about those differences. You don't allow them to develop into prejudice and hatred. And you only really get to build community cohesion and understanding between different nationalities and faiths when people actually sit down and talk to one another and can see each other's humanity and come to that understanding that what unites us is far, far stronger than what divides us. As we've developed our programs and held many different events, we've particularly concentrated on those opportunities to have what we call difficult dialogues, where groups of people can sit down, but in an atmosphere of respect, and have honest, open debates about different issues, about issues that they may have concerns about, prejudices about, and work those through and reach a position of understanding. Also from that, we've developed our anti-racist pack, our anti-racist workshops. And last year, we were fortunate to be given a grant by the Police and Crime Commissioner. This is money drawn from assets confiscated from criminals. And we've been using those funds to deliver programs in various schools to give students that space to talk about prejudice, to talk about hatred, to understand the prejudices that they themselves may have, to get behind some of the myths and actually look at the hard figures, and particularly to be able to celebrate what the whole issue about diversity has given to us. I think it is really important that we stand up, we state our position. You cannot be passively anti-racist. You actually have to get up and do something. You actually have to be prepared to stand up and voice your feelings. You have to be prepared to reach out and understand other people that you may not fully understand. And you have to be able to be prepared to sit down and talk to those people and make your own position crystal clear. So it is really, really important that this event is being held tonight. Sadly, we know that some of those prejudices that we've talked about can grow and grow. They can spread across a community, across a nation, and actually be used to then do dreadful things against particular minorities, sometimes to suit particular political messages and to sow division and to blame one particular group for a problem a nation or a community may actually have. So it is wonderful that young people particularly are coming together tonight to state their position. And I hope that all of us will continue to build on that, to support on that, and to celebrate all the wonderful things that our diversity has brought to us, and particularly to celebrate that the great strengths of Greater Manchester is its diversity and its willingness to constantly build community cohesion and spread understanding. Thank you, Khadija.
Thank you very much for that, Peter. Up next, we have Director of MACFEST, Qaisra, who will be discussing her experience of her Bosnian visit.
Thank you, Khadija. Good evening, everyone, and assalamu alaikum. Thank you for joining our annual memorial Remember Srebrenica event, remembering the victims of over 8,000 men and young boys massacred. And what was their crime? They were Muslims. A warm welcome and thank you to all our guest speakers this evening. Thank you to our chief guest, the High Sheriff of Greater Manchester, Diane Hawkins, for presiding over this event. We're delighted to have her join us. This event in particular, delighted to say, they celebrate schools and the youth. A really warm welcome to our student guests. We are honored that they're able to contribute to tonight. I'm one of Remember Srebrenica champions, and I had the privilege of being part of a very special Remember Srebrenica women delegation a few years back. We visited several places in Bosnia, including Srebrenica and the Potičari cemetery. I still recall those poignant moments, standing in the big hall where over 3,000 families sought refuge with the United Nations troop, and they failed them. They deserted them at the end. Outside, what struck me was this: the place was isolated. There were mountains and forests. It was in those mountains that the men were hunted down and massacred. During our visit, we spoke to the women, victims of rape. Imagine, ladies and gentlemen, whilst the men were killed, the fate of thousands of women, they were being systematically raped and impregnated as a form of revenge. Raped in front of their husbands, families. Imagine their trauma, everyone, and their agony, and their mental health well-being, and their feeling, as Muslim women in particular, of utter shame. We visited a center which supports some of these victims. We met women and we talked to them. Some women had committed suicide over the years, unable to cope with the reality of bearing and giving birth to illegitimate babies. Women who had to meet the very same men in the streets who had once raped them. Some, unable to cope, left their homes and towns. I want to share with you the agony of those women, mothers and wives, who are still, after 26 years, looking for the body parts of their loved ones, thrown in mass graves and moved from place to hide their crimes. Imagine their agony, and it still continues for many. We were shown videos. There is a scene I will never forget, and I talk about it every year. And to this day, it's very painful for me. It's a scene of a father calling his son hiding in the forest. He says, "Narmeen, come down, we are safe." Only to find out that the friend, their neighbor, who had assured the father of their safety, was lying. He had betrayed them. The father, unwittingly, had called his son down, Narmeen, to be faced with death. We also came away full of admiration for the amazing women left behind, courageous women, resilient women, rebuilding their lives. And this is this year's theme. Women who are managing their lives, coping with the heartache without their men, and many have forgiven. I will end with the words of the famous lady of Bosnia, Munira, who reminded us that it all began with hate. We must never forget that. Today, I'm delighted we have our two survivors from Bosnia, as part of this evening, a young boy, Aldin Zilik, who has grown up over the years, and I know him like a family friend. He's now an adult. He fled from Bosnia with his family. We have Mobira Soft from Bolton, who arrived as a refugee as an adult. Both will share with you what their experience was of the war and leaving Bosnia, and now living in the UK, having rebuilt their lives. So thank you for joining us, everyone. Back to you, Hatice.
Thank you so much for that, Qaisra. Up next, we have the chief guest, High Sheriff of Greater Manchester, Diane Hawkins.
Thank you very much indeed, Khadija. And good evening, everyone. It's a huge privilege to be invited to today's Youth Speak Out event. And as Qaisra has already said, the theme is Rebuilding Lives and honours the 2 million people who were displaced during the genocide and ethnic cleansing in Bosnia. They have since dispersed over all the world. Today we honour the victims and the survivors of genocide and pledge ourselves to creating a better, stronger and more cohesive society in the United Kingdom. We have seen from Srebrenica that hatred and intolerance will flourish if it is not challenged. My generation can recall our parents and our grandparents talking about the Holocaust and never ever imagined that genocide could happen again. And it's truly appalling that within our lifetimes, half a century later, young men were killed for their faith and women, as Qaisra has so graphically described, were systematically raped. Such horrors cannot be and must not be forgotten. It is vitally important that we all understand the consequences of not taking action against hate. Bosnian communities all over the world are to be congratulated for their resilience, their bravery, and their courage. We particularly remember and recognise today those Bosnian families who came to join us in Greater Manchester. And I am personally delighted to welcome Mobira and her family, who live in my own hometown of Bolton. Thank you to all the young people and their teachers and heads for taking part in this event. Your contribution and your commitment to promote cohesion is especially important. You are the future generation and your voices must be heard.
Thank you for that, Diane. Up next, we have our guest speaker, who is the chair of Northwest Remembering Srebrenica, and we'll be talking about the work and the theme for this year. Welcome, Eleanor Chauhan.
Assalamu alaikum. May peace and blessings be upon you all. It's a real pleasure to be with you this evening. Thank you, Qaisra, and your very able team for again organising a commemoration event where we can remember those that perished in Bosnia 26 years ago. I know that this matter is something that's very close to both our hearts. Last week marked Srebrenica Memorial Week, and we'll be learning today about the Bosnian genocide, and the theme this year is Rebuilding Lives. And we'll be thinking about those who, after the genocide, had to continue to rebuild their lives and communities after their loved ones had been killed. Yesterday, the 11th of July, marked the 26th anniversary of the Srebrenica genocide, where 8,372 men and boys were killed simply because of their religion. On this day in 1995, Bosnian Serb forces, led by General Ratko Mladic, overran and captured the town of Srebrenica in eastern Bosnia, which had been declared a UN safe area. In the days that followed, Bosnian Muslim men and boys were systematically murdered and buried in mass graves. In total, around 100,000 were killed during this conflict, and around 12,000 of those being children, in a brutal campaign of ethnic cleansing. As Qaisra has mentioned, between 20 and 50,000 women were subjected to the most horrific sexual violence and rape camp. Around 4,000 children were born to these victims, and sadly suffer considerable injustices and discrimination in Bosnia today because of their status. In albeit very different ways, the COVID pandemic has brought loss and difficulty to millions, shattering individuals and communities who are now looking to rebuild their lives. And as we move forward to rebuilding our communities in the wake of the many health and economic challenges which people with divisive agendas are all too keen to exploit, we will remember the spirit of survivors who, despite the horrendous hatred and destruction that they were subjugated to themselves, have been rebuilding their lives with dignity, humanity, and without calling for retribution or promoting division or hatred. The mothers in Srebrenica are a true example of how to conduct yourself in a dignified but determined way in the pursuit of justice. Hate and retribution never enters their narratives. 2 million people were displaced during the genocide and ethnic cleansing in Bosnia during the 1990s, leaving them to seek refuge all over the world, with approximately 10,000 coming to live in the UK. Their stories show us how they have rebuilt their lives by dealing on the one hand with the trauma of losing loved ones, and on the other, their livelihood, as well as overcoming pain and suffering on a level that is hard for others to comprehend. Living with the reality that the genocide continues to this day, as the perpetrators have not been held to account and are able to walk free, and denial of genocide and glorification of the architects of the worst atrocity on European soil since the Second World War continues to be rife at individual, community, and institutional levels. However, despite this, survivors have shown inspirational strength and determination to rebuild their lives without calling for retribution against those who committed atrocities, and instead focusing on the pursuit of justice, which has been a critical component of the rebuilding process. Many have used their experiences to help refugees from all around the world, whilst others have spoken out against hatred and intolerance in an effort to educate future generations about the devastating consequences that can ensue if prejudice is allowed to flourish unchecked. The unprecedented increase in hate crime in the UK in the last few years serves as a stark reminder that we cannot afford to be complacent about the challenges that threaten community cohesion. It underlies the importance of why we must remain vigilant against forces and take positive action to strengthen our communities, as the lessons from Srebrenica show us that no society is invulnerable to prejudice and intolerance. The process of rebuilding lives for those who have experienced hate and discrimination is one in which our communities must play an active part in, from the police to the judiciary, to schools, to government institutions and civic society. Each and every one of us has an important contribution to make in order to help rebuild lives and to create resilient communities and show that the pernicious forces of hatred and intolerance will not prevail. Whilst football has united the whole country behind England team, it's hugely distressing and insulting that players such as our own much-loved Marcus Rashford has been subjugated to horrendous hate on social media and his mural in Manchester vandalised with racist graffiti. This is completely unacceptable, and I admire 3 Muslim women who started a campaign this morning to ban racist fans from England football matches for life. I'm encouraged that the petition is already reaching 400,000 signatures. Focusing on rebuilding lives will also illustrate the role that individual organisations and nations have played in enabling those who have survived genocide to rebuild their lives, whilst encouraging others to reflect upon their own responsibilities in countering hatred, intolerance, and genocide denial. For example, over the past 20 years, the UK has committed £2.5 million of funding to projects in Bosnia dealing with the aftermath of this and its genocide, including towards constructing the Potocari Genocide Memorial Centre, which provides a lot of education for our future generations. Furthermore, the British government has also committed over £4 million of funding to those still missing from all sides of the 1990s conflicts in the Western Balkans, and has contributed to achieving justice for victims of these conflicts by working with and alongside the International Residual Mechanism for Criminal Tribunals and the ICTY. The UK continues to provide financial support through the UN contributions also. Yesterday, the 11th of July, marked the 26th of the anniversary, where 8,372 men and young boys were killed simply because of their religion. Srebrenica was the only area in Bosnia during the conflict that legally met the tough criteria to be called a genocide, but we must recognise that there were many other genocides that happened across the country. Prijedor being another example where Muslims were forced to wear white armbands to identify them from their Serb neighbours. We are one humanity, and it breaks my heart thinking of the families that will lay to rest in the Potchari cemetery fragments of bones that belonged to 19 victims, meticulously identified through DNA analysis. And yesterday, families put to rest their loved ones after 26 years. They were all the victims of hate. I ask you all to remember the victims of genocides in your prayers and urge you to play your part in learning the lessons and consequences of hate. Do remember that your individual action has the potential to impact change, just as a single candle can illuminate the way forward. May God's blessings be upon you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your message, Eleanor. Up next, we have a very special guest, Mubira Sufik, who escaped from Bosnia and came to England in October 1992, 29 years ago, with her two boys aged 2 and 7. She now works at Bolton College for the past 20 years and is based in Bolton. Welcome, Mubira.
Thank you, Hatija. Hello, everyone. Before I start, I'm going to say a big hello to Diane, who mentioned my name, because I am from Bolton as well. Hello, everyone. I'm Mubira and originally came from Bosnia to this country in October 1992. This country made me welcome and gave me shelter. Me and my boys have assimilated to the culture, language, and everything. They are both very well settled in this country. My boys finished university and now live their life normal in England like everybody else. When I came to England in 1992, I could not find a lot of difference between the lifestyle which I had in former Yugoslavia and the life that has been led in England. Only the difference I had at the time, it was the language. I did not speak English at all. My English was zero. So from the first day that I came to here, I started to learn English. I enrolled myself at Bolton College. As soon as I found my place, because the first few months we've been in the mosque, and then we've been settled in the house, and I enrolled my boys at that time who are 3 and 7 and 8 years to school, and I enrolled at Bolton College. Very quickly I learned language, and a few years down the line, I applied at Bolton College to work as a bilingual assistant to help another Bosnian to learn English. After working as a bilingual assistant for a few years, I applied. I needed more money, so I applied for the work in Morrison as a cashier. I did work in Morrison a few years. Then from there, I progressed to Marks and Spencer to work there, and I worked about 15 years in Marks and Spencer as a kind of role leader in the cashier section. While I was working in college or in Marks and Spencer, at the same time I progressed with my education, because in my country I finished economic degree and I want to kind of get myself better, which I couldn't do at the time when my kids are small. So when my kids become to go to secondary school, I enrolled at the college. I finished AAT, accountancy and business. After finishing my education, and I done as well teaching assistant course, and I tried to get a better job. And at that time, college advertised for the admin roles and enrollment officer, and I applied and got my job. And since then, I have been working for Bolton College, which is more than 20 years. What I can say about myself in this country, I can say that I am settled in this country. I am welcome in this country. I can find this is my second country, or sometimes my boys will say this is their first country, because they came here as a very young, as a 2 and 7 years old people. So they grown up in this country, so England became their country. I will never forget my son when we went to visit my family, because the rest of my family lives in Sweden, and we were in the Paris airport. We went to speak with somebody on the airport, and the people speak English. And my son turned to me and said, "Mom, I'm so proud of my language." I just said, "Why?" He said, "Everybody speak my language." I said, "What's your language?" He said, "English." I said, "Mirza, you are Bosnian." He said, "Mom, no, everybody speak English, mine." And then I realized, oh my goodness, my kids actually, they are. Because as much I try to keep their own language, Bosnian, they are grown up here, and they accept this is my language. And in some way, I was proud when I kind of been taken away, because that's nice, that the feeling that they gave to me. My both boys settled down. As I said, they have their life here, and I'm working for college. I would like to say to panel today a little bit about how the war started in Bosnia. And actually, everything, I am a little bit kind of been disappointed. A lot of people did not understand when we came to England, because they look at us, which is, I don't know, we are actually has been part of the Europe. We never thought that we would find ourselves in a situation which we are at the moment. And any racism which I come across, it really frightens me, because I live in former Yugoslavia, which was very much kind of united country under Tito. And we all had a very good life. And when the Tito died in 1980, whole the world came to funeral. That was the actually biggest funeral in the recent history. No, in the history, because we said that 128 countries out of 154 countries came to be on his funeral. Even I remember when Margaret Thatcher came to his funeral. I was at that time student in Belgrade, watching all the dignitaries flying, going from the Surgeon airport to his funeral. And I was kind of proud of my country, of my president, who unfortunately died. But after Tito died, my country gone very much down. As the year passed, year by year, my country slowly dissolved. First, Slovenia and Croatia applied to independence. They did not want to be part of the anymore united Yugoslavia, because after Milosevic came to power, he wants to kind of take the much more centralized control. And Slovenia and Croatia didn't want, so they do the independence vote, and they got the independence, and they've been recognized by the United Nations. After Croatia and Slovenia became independent, all the army that was stationed in that country came back to Bosnia. Bosnia was a country which has had three main nations, Croat, Serb, and Bosnian Muslim. We lived for the centuries together. I never ever thought that the war would start in my country. My dad, my family, we all lived together and thought there is no reason to fight. There is nothing to fight. We respect each other. My dad sent me to Belgrade to study. My brother went to Slovenia. My brother was in Sarajevo. Second brother was in Tuzla. We went whole of the Yugoslavia to study, and we just came back with respect everybody, and we thought everybody respect us. But how wrong I was. When the army from the Slovenia and Croatia came to Bosnia, we knew that something's not right. The Serb become more and more agitated, more and more want a right for themselves, and they try to look us as a second-class citizens. We had so many atrocity happening in Bosnia. So many people have to be forced to leave the villages. Some people has been attacked, killed. At that time, I was married in different part of this Bosnia from my family. My husband just died in January 1992, and I can see the war is coming to my Bosnia and Herzegovina. I pack my things slowly, and I just expect what is coming next. In 11th of April 1992, a friend of my husband came to the door and he said, "You have to leave the apartment house. They are coming." 2 o'clock in the morning, I pack up my two boys, grab Mirza, who is 2 years older than Amir, who was 7 at that time, grab my two bags, and we sit in his car, and he drove me across the road, across the border to Croatia. I stayed 6 months in Croatia in a refugee camp, thinking the war will stop. I have not done nothing. I can go back to my country. Unfortunately, war had started on the April and did not finish until 1995, but as peace has been signed in January 1996. As the time progressed in a refugee camp, I see I have to look at for something, because while I was in Croatia, my kids has not been allowed to go to school. That's the first time in Croatia that I felt second-class citizen. Just because I was a Muslim and my boys are Muslim, I was not allowed to go to, my kids are not allowed to go to school. Actually, my oldest boy, who was at that 7 years, is not allowed to go to school. I said I have to go look for something, because I don't know how long it will last. At that time, I heard that there is a convoy taking a wounded soldier and a single parent with the young kids to England. I put my name on the list, and I came to England in October 1992. About 2,200,000 people has been displaced from Bosnia and Herzegovina. 200,000 people has been killed. 8,372 people has been killed in Srebrenica. 3,400 people has been killed in Prijedor. A lot of people just been killed just because of they are Muslim, and nothing else, just because of the religion, not because of the color, not because of the way of their life. I did not have different way of their life than any Croat, any Serb. They did not know if they see me or how I talk or how I look, if I'm Croat or Serb. They only know about my name, that I am Muslim. And for that reason, they want to kill me. I am very well aware about the racism and about prejudice now. I never knew about that at that time, but now I know about this, and I am very much I'm settled in this country. I'm very well welcome. I have my life. I got my job. I have my house. My boys are married. The life is on, but there is some things inside me which little bit frighten me whenever I see any racism or anything negative comments on the Facebook, on Instagram. I'm always afraid. I don't want anything to happen to anybody anywhere. When I'm saying that they said what they've done, I'm never going to brush everybody with the same paint. Not all the Serb are not genocide people. Not all the people from Serbia want to kill us. Not all Croat people didn't let my kids to go to school. Only politicians who put a bad words into the certain people who did not think with their brain that the people are just different, but because you are different religion doesn't mean that you are bad or that you are good. There is a goodness and badness in everybody, but majority of people are good. My from Belgrade, when I came to England, I find out that she wrote a letter to my mom and dad to apologize for the atrocity what they said doing to us. She went to my town. She chased to find the pictures of from my house. She took the picture to the Belgrade and find a way to send to me to England. That's the Serb who done the things. So I always have to say, we cannot never say everybody is bad or everybody is good. In every country there is a bad people, but majority are good.
Thank you so much, Sister Mobira.
That's for me.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you again, Mubira. That was so powerful. Up next, we have Alden Zilic, who's another guest speaker. He is from Bosnia, and he's a school teacher from Manchester Health Academy. He arrived as a refugee from Bosnia as a young child with his mother, sister, and 2 aunts. Over to you, Alden.
Thank you, Qaisra, for having me and giving me the opportunity to share this, my story really, with you guys. I'll do my best to keep it 10 minutes. I just started my timer, so I'll know when it's time's up. But I'm just going to tell you about a bit about Bosnia and about my experience as a war child, and share a little presentation and a little video with you guys so you can get a better idea about how things were in Bosnia, and you know, so you have a bit of an insight into that. So obviously, my name is Alden Zilic. I've been here in England since 1993. I came here with my mum and my little sister when war in Bosnia broke out. I hope you can see my presentation. So just to give a little bit of insight about Bosnia before the war. Before the war, there was 3 main nationalities and 3 main religions in Bosnia. They had a population of about 3.8 million, small country. Most of the population in Bosnia were Muslim, about 48%. 37 were Serbian, and about 40% were Catholic Croats. Obviously, the reason for conflict, there is a war in from 1992 to 1996, but the main reason of that was the breakup of Yugoslavia. Communism was coming to an end, and you know, it was new times, beginning of new times in that Eastern Europe. And because of the end of communism, there was a lot of religious freedom for people, and they wanted to experience that freedom, which led to ultimate war in the end. And there was this dispute with Bosnia. Some people wanted Bosnia to be independent, and some people did not. They wanted to remain part of Yugoslavia. I just want to show you a quick picture of Bosnia. These are the 2 pictures of Sarajevo, the capital where I was born. This is before communism and during communism. So this is 1945, just after Second World War, and 1974. Just wanted to outline the differences in what people wore. I mean, you still see the mosques. The only difference was in 1974, religion was restricted for people. You might notice that the clothes people wore in Sarajevo before communism was very different from 1974. In 1974, everyone has pretty much the same clothes. The communists tried to make sure everyone looks the same, acts the same, believes the same things. Brotherhood and unity was the motto at that time. I'm going to show a little video about Sarajevo just at First World War. This is shot during the Austro-Hungarian period. It's a 4-minute video. I'll do a little commentary over it, just to sort of to show you how Bosnia and Sarajevo was like. So this is Sarajevo, 1915. As you might know, Bosnia, people always assume there was a genocide in Bosnia in 1992, but Bosnia had a long history of genocide before 1992. During medieval times, Bosnia was a refuge place for people from all over Europe. They used to emigrate to Bosnia as a way to have religious freedom during the persecution through Inquisition. A lot of people went to Bosnia to escape persecution. Bosnia was had very tough terrain, mountainous, and a lot of forests, so it was quite easy for them to practice their religion without being oppressed. At that time, the Bosnian king, their little kingdom as well, so there was a kingdom about Bosnia, they had to declare themselves as Catholic just to avoid persecution. Sarajevo in First World War was, it was occupied by Austria-Hungary, but you can still see people had a lot of freedom in Sarajevo. They can wear what they like, and you can identify people from the clothes they wore. You can see who was a Muslim, who was a Catholic, who was a Serbian, but they had that respect for people because everyone lived together. It was an early form of, living in a country of people of different backgrounds. A lot of people from Hungary and Czechoslovakia, Poland, emigrated to Bosnia as that was part of an empire, Austro-Hungarian Empire. It's, it was at that time, you can notice, the times were tough at that time. It wasn't easy to live in during the First World War. There was more transport, but Bosnia was one of the first cities to have a tram in Europe. It was an experimental tram brought by Austria-Hungary, and that tram line from the center of Sarajevo to the new part of Sarajevo is the first tram line to be built in Europe. I'm not going to spend too much on the video because I've got to just share my story as well. But if you would like to see this video more, it's only a 4-minute video. If you go to YouTube and type in Sarajevo 1915, you can check in a full sort of view. I will stop it here and I'll just move on with my presentation. So hold that. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to tell a bit about my story, about how I came to England and my experiences as a refugee child, and what I had to go through. So can you see my screen? Hopefully you can see my screen now. Just want to show you the traditional clothes of Bosnia. This is before communism. These were outlawed during communist times. Unfortunately, Tito didn't like people being different. He wanted everyone to be the same. Just want to mention there's a big Jewish community in Bosnia, the Sephardi Jews. A lot of these were refugees themselves from Spain. They emigrated to Bosnia because of persecution by the Spanish Inquisition. And even the Jewish sort of people in Bosnia, they had their own customs and had their own clothing, and they were welcomed. Now, obviously, the reason for the breakup of Bosnia and Yugoslavia in general was people wanted to redraw the borders. The first time they tried to redraw the borders was the Second World War, when Germany occupied Yugoslavia. They tried to make a greater Croatia, which incorporated Bosnia, part of Serbia, and Montenegro as well. That was their plan. And obviously in 1992, Milosevic and the extremist Serbian parties wanted to organize a greater Serbia, which included all of Bosnia and parts of Croatia as well. Just an interesting fact, people don't know that Milosevic had a meeting with the Croatian president before the war to try to carve up Bosnia and give one part of Croatia, one part of Bosnia as well. That was one of the options they discussed, even though they were at war with each other. Right, so during Bosnian War, there were a few things you could do, basically. You could stay where you are, and it was probably the most riskiest option. A lot of my family members did that, stay where you are and try to survive the war. Move to a safe haven area like Srebrenica or Bihać or Goražde. These were the safe locations. Usually these were sort of surrounded by the enemy troops, so it was hard to get there. But even when you get there, it wasn't very safe, really. Go to Serbia and Croatia, or Montenegro, or get an airlift from Sarajevo. Now, to get an airlift from Sarajevo, the capital, that only applies for children who are under the age of 16. Their families can go with them. So basically, children were airlifted from Sarajevo if they're under 16. They must have been wounded or suffered an injury during the conflict. So that was another requisite for it. And the other way you can leave Sarajevo was if you had Jewish ancestry. Jewish people of Bosnia, majority of them left Bosnia during the war and emigrated because of the war. How I got to the refugee camp in Croatia was through a pickup truck, well, a truck with wood. I was actually stationed in the back of a truck and I had to stay there because there's no transport to go from Bosnia to Croatia. The roads were very dangerous. There was roadblocks every couple of miles, and had to travel during the nights without no lights, so you couldn't be seen, so we didn't get shot. In Zagreb, in the refugee camp, I lived in a small room with 4 beds with 8 people. So 1 room, 4 beds and 8 people. Didn't have a toilet. We had to share a toilet with, I don't know, 700 other people. I don't know how many there were there. There was loads of people there. We had to live on rations and donations and very unhygienic conditions. And obviously I missed a whole year of school when I was 9 years old. Linking to my kids, and nowadays with COVID, they keep saying, "Oh, we missed a year of school." I was like, "Don't worry, I've done that myself. You'll be fine." And there was a lot of pressure from the Croatian government for people, Bosnians, Muslims, to leave Croatia. Unfortunately, war in Bosnia included Croats trying to carve up their own state in Bosnia. A lot of people don't know that; they just assume it was the Serbians, but it was extremist Croats as well. So that was the reason. I've got a couple of seconds left. I came to UK for human appeal. I stayed in a mosque for a few I think it was a couple of months. My life in UK obviously had to have a different cultural identity. Being different, trying to fit in. Starting at the bottom, working my way up, and try to be a good citizen. That's why I decided to become a teacher. I think I was lucky in how I managed to come here. Just a quick fact about Bosnians, where they ended up. Most Bosnians went to Germany, United States of America. In the UK, about 14,000 came during the 4-year conflict. Currently, there's about 2,000 Bosnians in the UK. Just the final message: forgive, but never forget. I'm currently working as a teacher. I'm sharing my stories with the kids in school where I work. And remember our past as it shapes our future. Live life to the fullest is my final message. And that will be my 10 minutes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alden. Up next, we have Johnny Weinberg, who is the Director of Operations of We Stand Together.
Thanks, Khadija, and it was wonderful to hear Mubara and Aldin's stories there, and such positive messaging from Aldin as he spoke. Despite being hugely different, there were actually many similarities between the Holocaust and the genocide that we're remembering today. And just as Jews had to wear the yellow Star of David, gay men pink triangles, Roma gypsies round triangles, and so on, non-Serbs in Bosnia, as you've heard, had to wear white armbands, put a white flag on their homes to identify them. And there were also concentration camps, forced labor, propaganda, many other actions that negatively emphasized difference. Just like in the 1930s, in May 1992 in Bosnia, they tried to sell these actions as for your own safety. But unlike the 1930s, most people weren't fooled. The similarities go on. As with Germany, nationalists had taken power, talking about the superiority of one race above another. It was sold that Serbs, Orthodox Christians were better than anyone else, and Muslims weren't worth having around. And President Milosevic said he had a solution, which he tried to sell to the European Union and other Western countries. And you can see those similarities with Hitler promising a final solution. Just as Jews were not going to exist in Europe, Muslims weren't going to exist in Bosnia. Before the Nazis took power, Jews had lived peacefully side by side with their non-Jewish neighbours, and before Milosevic, Bosnians with one another. But that soon changed once nationalists told Bosnian Serbs that they were in danger, and the same tropes were used against Jews in Germany and across Europe. Once you create that environment for division, people are more comfortable to attack those who are different. Again, that challenge is imperative to prevent those racist opinions becoming an accepted narrative, and instead look to institute a positive narrative. And again, that's what we've heard from our speakers previously. So those wanting to sow division use fear of the unknown. That's why building understanding and educating about both the history of such conflicts, as we're doing here, is so important, but even more so, celebrating the rich, diverse cultures that exist. And that's why I'm involved with We Stand Together and why our aims are clear. It's about celebrating diversity, challenging hate, so that we can build a safer and stronger society. And it's that proactive, positive approach that will win the day. So thank you all for coming along today and being part of this.
Thank you, Johnny. Up next, we have the main host for the event. I want to welcome Neil and Donna, who are head teachers of Levenshulme High School for Girls. Also, I just want to share before I pass over, if you do have any comments for the speakers or guest speakers, please drop them in the comment section below. And also, if you have any questions, over to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Khadija. Good evening, everybody. And the first thing I'd like to do is thank everybody, particularly those who have spoken before, for the clarity that they have communicated some really powerful messages to all of us. As one of MACFEST's longest standing partners, we've always been incredibly both proud and privileged to collaborate on work which seeks to raise awareness. Much of what I'm about to say now, which I prepared earlier on, has already been said, but I think that just goes to spread the joy of a common language that we're all using regarding the importance of events such as this. So being able to raise awareness of these important matters and deepening learning for both adults and young people is really at the heart of all that we do. And it's with that ambitious aim of securing that harmony, that shared understanding and that celebration of diversity, which can lead to peace and happiness. Donna.
Our school values very much mirror the thoughts shared so far. And one of the very many things that makes Neil and I so proud of being the co-head teachers at Levenshulme is the way that the young people are thoughtful and respectful to everyone. They are moral and decisive, always wanting to support others and to highlight issues that they think deserve attention. Mabira's words are resonating massively as we proudly introduce one of our Year 9 students, May Ali, who's one of our fantastic young people who will introduce herself and then we'll speak to all of us. Over to you, May.
So, hello, my name is May. I'm in Year 9. I'm from Levenshulme High School, and I'll begin. Genocide is the deliberate killing of a large number of people from a particular nation or ethnic group with the aim of destroying that nation or group. It's horrible and utterly inhumane and has been going on repeatedly for several decades. But asking us to stop it is a large thing to ask. However, to prevent history from repeating itself, we can change the mind of future generations to come by spreading awareness and speaking out. This generation is powerful, there's no doubt about that. One small incident can set a light off and ignite the world to fight for a cause. For example, the Black Lives Matter movement started after George Floyd was killed by a white officer, all because he was a Black man. The death of Sarah Everard, a woman walking alone at night, stabbed by a police officer. Even the more recent event on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has made people in countries from Germany, USA, France, the Middle East, etc., to protest to free Palestine. These incidents have sparked the world as the message spread through social media. People fought for the racial injustice and still are by going around and educating, protesting and raising money, giving donations and much more. We should use this time to our advantage and educate everyone and speak up about the past genocides, such as the Holocaust, the 1940s, the Khmer Rouge regime, 1970s, Rwandan genocide, 1994, and the Bosnian genocide, 1995. However, these are only a few of the many that have occurred, but if you notice, there's a common theme between these events. They're happening one after the other, targeted at a set group of people. We cannot be quiet about something that doesn't affect us or only speak out when something troubles us, as nobody will rejoice as it doesn't apply to them. This is inequality. A poem written by Martin Niemöller sums this up beautifully. First, they came to the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. While the prevention of genocide is typically approached from a political or national defense angle, the field of public health can also make a significant contribution to this effort. Genocide, along with other forms of mass atrocity, is inherently an issue of public health, as it has a significant and detrimental impact on population health, both immediately after the violence occurs and in the long-term health of post-genocidal population. With regards to the mortality numbers alone, genocide has killed more people than war-related deaths in every historical period, and it also far surpasses the mortality rates of some of the most pressing epidemiological rates. In 1994, the year that the Rwandan genocide occurred, the mortality rates from the genocide itself was 20 times higher than the rate of HIV/AIDS deaths, more than 70 times higher than the rate of malaria-related deaths. Even though Rwanda was a geographically sandwiched between these two pandemics. And in the long run, the public health impact of genocide goes beyond the number of people killed. During genocide, healthcare facilities are often destroyed, doctors and nurses are killed in the violence, and the usual disease prevention efforts of the nation are disrupted. For example, immunization programs, which normally save thousands of lives, the destruction of these facilities and healthcare programs has long-term effects. Additionally, post-genocidal societies have an increased rate of chronic and acute disease, low birth rates, and increased malnutrition. The individual level health of genocide survivors also suffers in the long term, given that the significant trauma has both long-lasting psychological and physical effects. The American Medical Association recognizes these critical links between the health and human rights around genocide and its prevention, and urges physicians to approach genocide using public health strategies. Such strategies include documentation of genocide and pre-genocidal conditions, education and spreading awareness about the understanding of genocide and its psychological persecutors to the public, to other health professionals and to policymakers, and advocacy for policies and programs aimed at the prevention of genocide. If we don't act now, history will just repeat itself. Thank you.
Thank you, May. That was incredibly powerful. And Miss Johnson, as she's known to you, and myself are always incredibly proud of all of the young people with whom we work. And this evening, you have definitely communicated everything you needed to say with incredible clarity, and we thank you very much for that. It's with great pleasure that I now introduce our next panelist. I'm going to hand over to Jamila Kossar, MBE, who is a member of the senior leadership team at Manchester Islamic Grammar School for Girls, and she'll introduce her student, Habiba. Over to you, Jamila.
Thank you, Neil. Good evening, everyone. It's been really great to hear everyone's stories and heart-wrenching memories of what some people have really been living through. And I would like to introduce Habiba, who's a Year 10 student, and she's recently been appointed as of last Friday head girl of Manchester Islamic Grammar School for Girls. She's prepared a powerful spoken word piece, so if I pass it on to Habiba, I'm sure she will introduce herself as well.
Hello everyone, it's really good. It's really amazing for me to get this opportunity to be here, as this is a very important issue. And I wrote a spoken word about it, and without further ado, I'm gonna start. The year was 1995, only 50 years after 1945, the year where we gasped and said never again. Never again will we allow segregation, hatred, or any action of malicious intent. Nevertheless, the year was 1995 when the Srebrenica massacre took place, an event that horrified and embarrassed the entire human race, at least those who knew of it, for the governments and militia would never admit the atrocities that did happen just a couple of months short of 1996. The year was 1995, when one day a whole community of people was happy and alive, the next, gone. Gone were they, their aspirations, their dreams, their hopes. Yes, yes, everyone will taste death, but not everyone will have it stuffed down their throats. But stuffed down their throats it was. 1 minute they were trekking to Potachari, the next they were approached by the army. Oh, I'm sorry, did I say approached? I meant that 1 second they were free, the next they were not. Hot, crowded, fast-paced. Stomp, stomp, stomp as the bodies drop, drop, drop. The crunch of the grass underneath their feet, the sound next to their ears of please, 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 some mercy, spare them, please, my father, my son, my brother. One after the other they are dragged, they struggle, they fight, they are blindfolded, the noise, the cries, the pleas, the gun. Shot. Srebrenica. Its salt mines watered by the tears of its survivors. Srebrenica. Poppies grown in the blood of its victims. Srebrenica. Crouching in the shadow of its oppressors. Every day, ever since the year was 1995. Now let me ask you this. Has the year ever not been 1995? The Bosniaks, the Rohingya, the Uyghurs, the Palestinians in their strife. How many times do we have to say never again? Do we not know that the year is 1995? And it has been for a very long time. Have we not learned to speak not after, but at the time of the crime? How many times do we have to say it late and then forget? We forget and forget and forget, but we do not get. We do not get recognition, we do not get reconciliation, and we do not get justice. When shall we not forget? Forget that which we deserve to get. But trust me when I say this, as long as we all stand together, boys and girls, women and men, believe me when I say that soon there will come a day when never again will we say never again.
Wow, Habiba, I can very much see why you have just been appointed head girl at your school. What powerful words and what amazing clarity. And at our peril do we ignore the voices of young people. Just hearing May and then hearing Habiba and looking forward to hearing Edward and Halima, we know why these young people are the voices of their schools, and what we need now is for them to be the voices of their whole communities and just take the very powerful words forward. Congratulations on an amazing presentation, Habiba. Well done. So we would like to welcome Dr. Benjamin Eves, who's the Assistant Head Teacher, Key Stage 5 Progress from Cannon Slade Sixth Form in Bolton, and he will introduce us to his student, Edward.
Thank you very much indeed, and it's been a hugely humbling experience to hear the stories of survivors and the way they've, as we are discussing tonight, rebuilt their lives, and how important it is that we never forget, but that we're able to forgive. I'll introduce Edward now, who is one of our Year 12 students and a keen historian, to say a few words. So, Edward, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Reeves. When researching the Srebrenica genocide, what shocked me the most was the dehumanization of those that died. The description of them as parcels by the perpetrators shows the manifestations of the worst prejudices and feelings of human depravity, all of which culminated in the shocking atrocities committed at Srebrenica. While after an event as horrific as a premeditated and systematic murder of 8,372 people solely because of their faith, there's a tendency to want to learn and to move on. It is important not just to remember the statistic, but of the individuals encompassed within this number and their potential contribution to the future of the world. Contributions which have been lost due to the abhorrent actions of those that saw them as lesser than themselves. We should also remember the responsibility of those in positions of power and authority to protect the vulnerable, and how in this instance, these groups failed the people of Srebrenica. Something especially shocking due to the fact that the mass killings at Srebrenica took place just 50 years after the Holocaust. Throughout the world, groups such as the UN and countries such as the United Kingdom must be more proactive in identifying and stopping events such as these taking place, and must heed the warnings of others before it is too late. To move on fully, all problems must be addressed, with the overriding root cause being bigotry and discrimination. This cannot simply be achieved by the suppression of these prejudices and allowing them to simmer unchallenged, but rather by actively challenging these prejudices, preventing people turning to hate and re-educating them to see the issues and falsehoods with harmful prejudices. something which can be achieved through the continued spreading of awareness about Srebrenica, which allows people to see what happens when harmful ideas become the norm within the group. As a Christian school, we have strived to implement the ideals of reconciliation and rebuilding of relations between communities for our membership of the Community of the Cross of Nails. This group celebrates diversity and breaks down barriers, leading to more understanding and ultimately greater friendships and links between communities, something which, like the legacy of Srebrenica, has helped to bring about both now and will do for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Edward. Yet again, a wonderfully thoughtful piece of speaking from a young person, and we can all should hopefully take so much inspiration from 3 very different presentations so far, but yet all communicating very similar messages. And we should all feel in very safe hands with the youth of today, who really do have a clear sense of moral purpose and a compass that drives positive change in that celebration of all aspects of diverse life. I'd now like to hand over to our colleague Jack Griffiths from Loreto College, who's going to introduce his student Halima Bakali. Over to you, Jack.
Thank you, Neil. Good evening, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to introduce Halima this evening. I'm Halima's head of hall at Loreto College. Halima's currently in year 12 or just finished, and she's studying A-levels in business, English language and psychology. We've been talking about building futures, and Halima's planning to apply to university to study psychology and is thinking about maybe going into a career of clinical psychology. So she's got a bright future ahead of her. So I'll hand over to her. Halima.
Thank you. When I think of Bosnia and the Srebrenica War, I don't have to look far, as I see it all in my mum. She was around my age when she had to flee a war-torn country which she loved and loves so dearly. Although my mum finds it too painful to talk about her war memories and traumas, I know that she faced a real hardship and struggles while she was there, and the war was raging all around her. She, with tears in her eyes, recalls how scared she and her mum were as their village got surrounded by Serbs and they ran out of food. It was only my mum and her mother in their family home, as they were already separated from my mum's brother and sisters. It was under these most trying and traumatic of circumstances that both my mum and her mum had to make the most heartbreaking decision and choice that human beings can ever be forced to make. My grandmother wanted my mum, her youngest daughter, to leave in order to save her life, as the Serbian terrorist forces were advancing ever nearer and the local town and villages were about to be overrun and taken. My mum didn't want to leave her already ailing mother. It is unbelievably hard for me to comprehend just how awful those circumstances were and how desperate my mother and her mother felt at the time. My mum couldn't bear to watch her mum being so frightened for my mum's life and well-being any longer. My mum left and she faced a harrowing journey out of the country she loved so much. I was now watching it ablaze and become terrorized and destroyed. The journey my mum endured all alone, without anyone with her whom she knew, without knowing where she was going, with no food and clothes already too worn and torn. I only know a small part of her journey. All other details will always remain known only to my mum, as she still struggles with those memories today and doesn't like sharing them. I learned so much from my mum, but these are the values that stand out for me. It is courage in calamity, patience in adversity, strength and resilience to carry on amidst the tragedy, and to always challenge language of hatred and division, because we only need to learn and take a look at Bosnia to see that this is how it all starts. It starts with the language of politicians, people in power, media, and then it spreads like wildfire, impossible to stop or contain. Mum often says, watch out for language of, we are different, we are better, we are stronger, we are more noble, birth, nation, race, and breed, because long before the war broke out, this language was used by the Serbs. We shouldn't allow this divisive language and rhetoric to thrive. It is this language that turned neighbor on neighbor, friend on friend, even husband on wife. So we, the younger generation, must challenge and not accept language that encourages hatred, supremacy, racism, as it is dangerous and always leads to conflict and suffering. As late Princess of Wales once said, for evil to triumph, a good man must do nothing. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Halima. That was incredibly powerful, and what a really personal story that you told there about your family's experiences. And definitely with regard to the power of language, it's so important, and something we see time and time again is the young people doing exactly that, challenging misuse of language to make sure that messages of hatred are not tolerated, and that where there are issues that need raising, that they are raised. And that's exactly what this event this evening is doing. And we're hearing from the young people, and we're hearing some really powerful messages. So thank you. In this next part of this, just before we come to a conclusion, is around making some actions of commitment about the fact that whatever's said here doesn't just stay here, and that the word is spread yet further to ensure that these really important messages are heard in a larger audience and a bigger landscape. So I'm going to start off just by making one commitment before I hand over to Donna to state our other one. At Levenshulme High School, what we're going to make sure is that in September, that May, who you've heard this evening, and her friend Hannah, who you should have heard this evening, are going to present their work in assemblies in September, so that the reach across school is spread across all of our students. Donna?
We'll also be using our school calendar to mark Remembering Srebrenica and commit to include learning about this situation in our full time programme. It's crucial that we support and encourage keeping the minds of our young people open to events in history that have had an impact on their communities, but also the events where further education is needed. Our school values, which include equality, democracy and solidarity, place us in a perfect position to open and to drive these conversations. Neil and I wholeheartedly commit to these pledges. Can I hand over to Jamila now to share the pledges of their school?
Hi, thank you, Donna. So at Manchester Islamic Grammar School for Girls, we're always talking about different injustices that happen, and especially being a Muslim faith-based school, there are many, not just Bosnian Muslims, that are going through injustices in the past. And I think as educators and as teachers, if we don't condemn or pledge against one genocide, we have to do it to all. So just like the Uyghur Muslims that are suffering right now and going through a genocide, and the Palestinians, we pledge to remember all human beings, regardless of their faith, regardless of their ethnic background, and especially regardless of where they are situated in history. And as Habiba and other students mentioned, we should be at a time and place where we're not saying never again. And there's no point saying never again if we're not remembering or pledging for not just the Bosnian Muslims, but for all human beings who are going through genocide at this very moment.
Thank you, Jamila.
Thank you, Jamila.
Donna, over to you. I'll stop speaking.
Okay, thank you, Jamila, for those very powerful words and that very powerful pledge. Can we now hand over to Ben at Canon Slade to offer us their pledges?
Absolutely. As I said previously, and then Edward said when he was speaking, we're part of the Cross of Nails, the community of the Cross of Nails through Coventry Cathedral, which at its very heart is reconciliation and healing the wounds of history. Myself and Edward were having several conversations over the last few weeks, and one of the things that really came through was the fact that the Srebrenica is not part of the national consciousness. We found this quite powerfully because I was a student in 1995, and that was it was something that we were very aware of at the time. But now it's subsumed within. It's not quite transitioned into history, and it's not quite in the national consciousness. So part of what we want to do is to make sure that we actually educate our students about not just past events, but current events and events that have happened within the last few decades, simply because they won't have experienced it. But it's so important that they understand these things can occur if nobody speaks out. If we just tolerate division, if we tolerate intolerance, then this is always going to repeat itself. And so we are looking at how we, within the school calendar, looking at Remember Srebrenica, certainly next year as we continue our links with MACFEST. and also how we can raise the awareness of through our work with the Cross of Nails, community of the Cross of Nails, of ensuring that, as Halima so clearly said, it's that we can't say never again if we don't live never again, and that's where we're going to come from.
Thank you, Ben. That's really really great that you've made that, and it's so the similarity. There's obviously some scope for cross-school collaboration here and sharing of resources to make sure that we absolutely keep these messages alive. Finally, if I can come to Jack at Loreto for your pledge, please.
Thanks, Neil. I think similar to you there, we're going to invite Halima to record her thoughts that she shared with all of us this evening so that we can share those with all of our students. We follow Mary Ward values at the Loreto College and Loreto family of schools, and two of those values are justice and truth. So we're going to look at how we can incorporate those, particularly in the 1 hour of RE that all of our students do each week, and to see whether we can incorporate remembering Srebrenica when we remember other genocides that have taken place.
Thank you, Jack. And as I've just put into the chat, and I know that Neil will agree, it's been absolutely humbling to listen to all of the speakers, the young people, the speakers at the start of tonight's session. And we both, on behalf of both of us, like to thank you all for your amazing contributions. Can I hand over to Kate now, please, for the vote of thanks?
Thank you so much. Wow, kind of lost for words, really. I had some notes prepared, but I've kind of really lost for words. This has been one of the most deeply moving evenings that I've attended in a very long time. An evening of remembrance, of reflection and learning. And I think the overwhelming message that has come from this evening is that, and it might sound a bit cliched, but there really, truly is more that keeps us bound together than there is that sets us apart. And I think I'm actually in awe of everyone who's spoken this evening. I'm going to try and gather myself together and do this properly, but I truly am in awe of everyone who has spoken this evening. We would like to thank very much all our speakers and survivors this evening for sharing your stories. Without sharing those experiences and those stories, we can't learn, we can't remember, we can't keep those things alive and keep those memories going and ensure that those things don't happen again. Thank you to our guest speakers, to Eleanor and to Diane, to Kajida from Faith Network for Manchester for kind of pulling us all together, although I'm rapidly unraveling all that for her. To Neil and Donna, thank you so much, and to all the teachers, head teachers, especially the young people and students tonight who have been incredible, absolutely incredible. I've attended a lot of these events before, never had the impact that this one has had on me tonight. And I'm absolutely sure the impression that it's left on me has been left on all of you as well. It's an impression that will ensure that we never forget. And also that we never forget all past and current atrocities against anyone. There is still stuff happening to people. Historically, there is. These things all need to be remembered. They are vital that we remember these things. We, as an organisation, we stand together. We will continue to stand together with all who have been affected by attack and atrocity because of who they are. No one should be persecuted in any way whatsoever because of who they are. In awe of you all, thank you all so much for your time, for attending. Thank you all so much for your contributions. They've been absolutely incredible. Thank you.
Smih rana. Jošanice rijeko mala, kraj tebe je Meira behar brana. Nosila ga mermeli sokakom, dok se ezan učio Sanđakom. Reci brate, je sve kao prije, da li sunce sa Peštera grije, jer sjenica gdje je nekad bila, kako mi je majka mila. Jer sjenica gdje je nekad bila, kako mi je majka mila. Leti pjesmo sred Sanđaka, tuđina je teška svaka. Kuća, posao, kuća, sudbina je naša, putujuća. Selam šaljem svima iz daljine, ostao sam željan babovine. Reci brate, je sve kao prije, da li sunce sa Peštera grije, jer sjenica gdje je nekad bila, kako mi je majka mila. Jer sjenica gdje je nekad bila, kako mi je majka mila. Reci brate, je sve kao prije, da li sunce sa Peštera grije, jer sjenica gdje je nekad bila, kako mi je majka mila. Jer sjenica gdje je nekad bila, kako mi je majka mila.
I just want to say thanks again to all the speakers for sharing your powerful words. I just want to leave you with the final message, which has been echoed throughout the evening, of not staying silent when injustices occur. Your voice is so powerful and does affect change. Also, just don't let what we have learned this evening stay here. Do continue the conversation and share with your friends and family. Have a great evening. Thank you and goodbye.